Hey, welcome to Eternally Board, the board game podcast about games and the many issues we must address as a community. I'm Charles Washington, and this is Trey Chambers, uh, designer of Argent the Consortium and the brand new game.
Imperial and Harvest by TMG.
There you go. So I guess the two of us are going to discuss some of the games that we've played as a little bit of a precursor to the general program. And then we'll go ahead and get into some of the newer issues that we have in the community. So first up, I think we should go and start with the game that you love of the series that you love, Game of Thrones, The Iron Throne, which is basically
Right. It's Cosmic Encounter. Did Fantasy Flight publish that one too? I don't.
I'm not sure.
I think it is a Fantasy Flight game, but basically it's Cosmic Encounter. It's set in the Game of Thrones universe, and it's very similar. In the beginning of the game, you'll select a leader who will be like your alien power in Cosmic. Each leader has their own special abilities, and each faction has their own deck of cards. So it's very similar to Cosmic. There's still all the negotiation and conflicts and things like that. So in general, I really liked it because I'm a fan of Cosmic and a fan of Game of Thrones. So it was like two things I already liked put together. I also think mechanic-wise, it's better than Cosmic because you do have more control. I mean, it's still random and swingy, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens, and there's crazy powers. But because each faction has their own deck, instead of everyone drawing from like a common deck, and also the powers are not as crazy and wild as they are in Cosmic.
Okay, so everyone has like their own technology deck and then their own power deck as well?
There's no technology. Instead, and this is my main problem with the game, they went with a hostage system instead, where you can actually capture hostages from other factions and then torture them for benefits or release them for other different benefits. And it's a little fiddly. Like, I think the technology was cleaner. It's like, in Cosmic, you put out a technology card and you can add power to it and eventually research it and get an ability or something special. The hostage system is just kind of fiddly.
I mean, do you send like hands to people, or sort of like the original series, or is it something of that nature with this?
The torture takes place out of game. Although I will say some of the torture took place in game because two of the people on my game group did not enjoy it. So 3 of the 5 of us enjoyed it, but they had never played Cosmic, so I don't think they knew what they were getting into. And then the other 2 guys, they like kind of conflict games like I do, so the 3 of us enjoyed it and the other 2 hated it.
So conflict, negotiation, and backstabbing.
Yeah.
And but a little bit more balance. I remember the original Cosmic Encounter, you might have a faction or alien power that sort of steamrolled other factions and alien powers that you get randomly. But
yeah, like I said, the balance is a lot better, I think, but it's still random swinginess can happen. Like, you have like a 20 combat card, and if you draw it, well, you're probably going to win at least one of the fights, but if it's bottom decked, you could never draw it in the whole game. So there's still like that random factor. So if you don't like any randomness or swinginess in your games, but at least in both in Cosmic and in the Iron Throne, you can mitigate that randomness by like negotiating with people and offering your support and getting victory points by winning with others, and just offering your support in battle. So it's I think the randomness gets mitigated by that negotiation factor to a degree that it's acceptable to me, but it's not going to be acceptable to everyone else.
And what I didn't see, while I wasn't playing, if we were playing another game at the time, I looked over here and I saw the components were very nice. I like the little crowns that were going up instead of the spaceships.
Yeah, the crowns are great, and there's 2 issues with the crowns. They blend in when you stack them, so you can't notice how powerful something is just by glancing at it like you could with the UFOs in Cosmic. In addition, the crowns should really be different colors based on faction. I don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, yes, you can like transfer powers between factions. I think like some factions can steal power. But, I mean, that's fine. I just think it would be a nice flourish if the crowns were different colors based on the factions, but not completely necessary, but would have been nice.
Good. Well, definitely have to try that out in the future. Now, another game that we've been both playing a bit, different groups, and I think we played once together, has been Secret Hitler, which is from the group that brought us Cards Against Humanity.
Oh yeah, I forgot they did that game. Okay.
Yeah, that game that I don't think it sold very well. Maybe a little cosmic counter game, but Secret Hitler is basically sort of like a game where you are, another social deduction game where you have two factions, the fascists and the liberals, and they are both, trying to get their agendas passed, and then there's secretly a Hitler character who is masquerading as a liberal and gets to win if he's elected by the liberals accidentally. But you've played this a few times, right? And
Yeah, we played multiple rounds on one night, and it was with non-gamers, so that was good. Only like a few of us at the table had ever played any kind of social deduction game. The rest were just people at a random game night. It was actually at my coworker's game night, and someone just happened to have a copy. I was like, I don't know if non-gamers can handle this game. There was also a couple of young kids that I was like, I don't know if kids can handle this game, because it's Secret Hitler is not complicated at all, but to a non-gamer it could be intimidating, especially those with no experience in social deduction games. So I was like, I don't know if they can handle this, but everyone handled it just fine. In fact, the kid was one of the best players. So
yeah, and my experience with it has been actually played it with my rabbi and congregants at his synagogue, as well as people at my own regular gaming group. So it's just, even though it sounds offensive, it seems like it goes pretty well. And definitely, like most of the social deduction games, I probably rank it currently, it's the hottest, and it's probably still one of the top three of the social deduction games that are out there. I still don't think it's quite as popular as Resistance Avalon, but
it's too expensive. It's like $35. Like, who wants to pay $35 for a social deduction game? Which is why I haven't bought it yet. But it is very fun.
But it comes with real wood pieces made in America.
Oh no, the components are off the chart. But we were talking about overproduced games a little bit last week. Secret Hitler is definitely an overproduced game. Like, it could have been made with cards, and it could have cost $15. Instead, it cost $35. And you have wooden pieces that are nice, but not necessary. I just kind of wish there was two versions of the game. Like, you can get the deluxe edition for $35, or the gameplay edition, or the regular edition for $15.
I mean, let's be honest, man. You could print and play this game fairly simply.
And many people did, way before it was released.
Exactly, but that's not why we play games. It's that tactile feeling. Of course, you can only say, a game can never be overproduced if it's good. Plenty of games can be overproduced if they're terrible. So it's, there is a double standard, but,
Yeah. If you like social deduction games, I think you'll get your money's worth, because I think you'll play it a lot. If you like Avalon, it's a nice variation of the Avalon resistance system. Although for me, the other reason I don't need to own it, besides that I think it's overproduced and a little too expensive, is that I already own Resistance, and I don't feel like it's different enough. Like, it's very similar to the way Resistance plays. It's just like a slight kind of variation on it. And it's a very, very solid system. And if I didn't own Resistance, I would definitely be more tempted to buy it. But I just don't feel the need to own both. But if you play social games a lot, for me, it's just social games are not one of the most common games that I play nowadays. But if you do play social deduction games a lot and you're getting kind of burnt out on Avalon Resistance, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I feel like if you have a game group, someone in your group should have this, and it works in a number of different areas. But a game that probably doesn't work in as many areas is Terra. Now, this game has been out for a while, and it is basically a pure trivia game, very well set out trivia game where multiple people will be answering 3 questions about a particular subject on a card. They'll use their answers in a round robin fashion to try to get points by being the closest to an estimated number, estimated place on the map, or an estimated year of discovery or creation. Terra is a game that was picked up by Bezier, and it's
Bezier?
Bezier? Yeah.
That's how people pronounce it. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but everyone else seems to say it that way.
And the thing about it is, it's a game that helps if you know geography and history and actual factual knowledge. And Americans are terrible at this. So
Hence, they made America.
Hence they made hence they
Just
made
for
America.
Americans.
Just for Americans. The game itself is really good. I tell people all the time, and I think the whole reason Allspark made America was because Americans really don't know much. So if you want to learn a lot about the world, I would recommend this game. But for your typical party game, people are just going to be
much about geography. Americans in general are terrible at geography, and a lot of people just are not interested in playing a geographical-based trivia game. Something like Timeline, I think Timeline gets by in that the fact that it's so simple, and because some of the dates are so obscure, even people who know a lot about history are kind of guessing. So everyone's just kind of like playing the educated guess game.
Plus, in Timeline, I've always been able to get away with the fact that it's a French game brought out by a French designer and a French company. So if anyone really disagrees with the dates, we literally say it's because the French made the game, which honestly is not any really good reason. It's really that Americans hate being wrong and we like to make our alternative facts correct. But getting back to Terra itself, I highly recommend it, especially if you're like have a group that does want to know and who likes trivia. It will give you some really hard. Actually, it's not a group that likes trivia, but it's even better for a group that likes to go to bar trivia to practice on together, because all that stuff will be repeated in bar trivia or some other trivia lessons.
Yeah, America, Terra, and Fauna all have similar systems. Basically, you try to guess exactly, but if you get even nearly correct, you also get some points. And so America did add a nice feature that I think you should probably sub in as a variant to all the games, whereas like if you think no one got it right, you can guess that no one got it correct. And other people have suggested online that you should just add it to Fauna and Terra as well. Probably a good idea, but they're all very solid systems. So if you like trivia games and you know anything about geography, go for it. It does have a kind of niche appeal though, because I love geography, and it's just like pulling teeth to get people to play this game. So your mileage may vary on that. If you have friends in your group that like geography as well, then it's an easy sell. But for me, it's been difficult to get to the table.
I just like to learn new things, so I get trounced all the time. But speaking of getting trounced, you did play a game called Kraftwagen, which I watched you play, but I didn't really get a chance to play it. I think you played it a couple times, but we were playing something else.
Yeah, I didn't know much about this game going in. I just knew that it was pretty highly rated. So it turns out it's similar to Glenmore, which is also kind of similar to like the Thebes system, whereas like everybody's on an action track, and it's your turn as long as you're in the rear of the action track. So you can keep taking actions until you're no longer in the back. So it's a twist on like the Glenmore Thebes system, which is a really intriguing system, because it's like, do I want to jump ahead and get what I really want, or do I want to just take a lesser action that I don't want as much, but then it'll be my turn faster. So and it's a good system because it gives the player like full control, whereas like a lot of games kind of are limiting on the kind of control that you have. But those games are like wide open. You can do literally anything you want, but if you jump too far ahead, you're going to be sitting there while other people get free benefits, free actions, more actions than you. So I would say it's a solid game. It's a very short game. It only took like 90 minutes or so. Actually less. It took like an hour. So for a light to medium weight Euro, it was a solid entry. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not going to buy it because I don't think there's a lot of replayability there. It's kind of like a sterile system. There's only like a few currencies. There's like you're bumping your engine, and you're manipulating like a buyer's market, and there's not like super interesting like powers or anything that add variation from game to game. But if you just want like a solid kind of stripped down Euro that plays in an hour and has interesting mechanics, then I think it's really good.
So it fits into that category of, if people really know it before, it'll be like a good filler before they go into like a meteor game or something of that nature.
Yeah. If you have an hour and you want to play like strategy game, I think it's good. My other problem with the game though is that while breakdown's pretty easy, setup takes a minute for like a game this long. It's probably too much setup, I think. But I don't know how you fix that. I mean, you either just make the game more complex or somehow simplify the setup. But I don't think you could even simplify the setup in this game. So it has downfalls, but in general I think it's a solid light to medium weight Euro game.
Now, I remember you were talking about with the people you played it with that has a couple other fairly good strategies that you can go through, I guess.
Yeah.
Or...
Another strength of the game, thanks for reminding me, I almost forgot, is that it has many different strategies, and I think they all equally work. Because like in our game, I won by like a couple of points by selling cheap cars, but then the other two guys did very different strategies. One was heavy into engines, the other one was heavy into something else, and there's also like a racetrack system, and I was heavy on I was just like pounding the racetrack and selling cheap cars whenever I could, and also like undercutting them because I was putting out the buyers that bought the cheap cars, so that kind of worked against their strategy. So that was pretty interesting, but again, it's not something that's like super complex or interesting that you would want to do all the time, at least in my opinion. But yeah, it's definitely a strength of the game is that it has varying paths of strategy that all are valid.
And as for myself, I compare all the automotive games to Kanban at present. So maybe there's something. Maybe I'm not a judgmental. I will give this game a try whenever I get a chance.
How do you feel about Kanban?
Man, I do think that's Lacerda's. Lacerda's not for whatever reason not a designer who risk me. I feel like Kanban is just the perfect combination of making an automobile assembly line plus just the everyday like business corporate meetings and endless set checkups that are really in corporate America. It's I will spend the entire other time talking about Kanban, but I do believe it is an excellent game, and I'll give a chance. I actually think I brought it today, so we'll probably get a chance to play it and maybe talk about it on another episode. But getting back to a game that we did play together, and speaking of pounding a strategy to death, we played Lorenzo, which should be coming out sometime at the end of May, maybe at the beginning of June.
What's the full name? It's like Lorenzo di Magnifico or something like that?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's an Italian title. But if you look up Lorenzo, you'll find it.
But this is from the designers of Solken, the Mayan calendar game, and it is basically a card-based engine builder where you are all together, sort of have a general tableau of cards, and you're trying to select the right one for your engine.
Yeah, using worker placement.
Using worker placement. I mean, maybe you can go a little bit more into the details of the design.
Yeah, it's basically a worker placement game where, like Charles was saying, it's an engine builder, so you use your workers to obtain the resources you need to basically run your engine and buy cards. And you also use our workers to claim cards, and it also uses dice and workers with varying degrees of power. So that you roll the dice, and the dice tell you how powerful your workers are, and you need workers of a certain power to obtain certain cards. So that part was interesting, but I think the real interest in the game comes in everyone's kind of building their different engine, and you use these cards in various ways to find an engine that you think is going to work for you.
And once you get the engine going, you will just see a snowball effect. I can only say this game is very similar to Race for the Galaxy or Glory to Rome in that if you have a engine that is really humming, and we played a 3-player game, so there was no, if 2 of us are competing on one thing and you are running away with your engine, you will go outrageously. And if you get the right cards at the right time, it doesn't matter how many people you're playing, you will, I won't say run away with it, but you will definitely be producing victory points at a high level. So I think the final result was fairly close, right?
Yeah, we were 10 points, 10-point spread between each of us. And yeah, the game it reminded me the most of is actually Russian Railroads. Not that mechanically they're similar, but just in the feel of the whole thing about Russian Railroads is you're trying to get tons of points by flogging an engine. In this, you're building your engine with the cards, and then you want to you can get an insane engine going, scoring you tons of points, which is ultimately what I did, and it worked. But I think everybody was kind of doing their own thing, different engines, and I think it has like various paths that will work. It seemed like I was really running away with it at first, but then everybody kind of caught up at the end. So I guess the points are pretty balanced. At first, it just seemed like, okay, I broke the game because I had like some insane engine that was just scoring me tons of points every round, but I was lacking in other areas. Like there's some set collection mechanics, and I was only collecting like one set of cards, so I didn't score as many points off of those. So.
Right. And one thing I should mention about the game that I actually liked a lot, and you could see a bit of it, was that each column had the different cards, and they were sort of color coded, and they were also assigned by age of cards. And I think that's something that's good in all games where you actually have a chance to build your engine. The game itself doesn't. It's going to have the same set of cards come out all the time, so you can actually, with repeated plays, build a good strategy around what you're looking for, even though being adaptable to your other opponent's choices, and the interaction is pretty heavy on the game. So I actually...
That is kind of my problem with the game is, so veterans can learn the deck and then build a strategy in their head, even going into the game, knowing certain cards will come out, whereas just there's too many cards for like new players to know. So while it does offer more control in the game, it kind of works against like you bringing new players in because you're just gonna crush them if you know like what cards are coming out and they have no idea. The other way it works against the game is that it reduces replayability. So like if there were cards you wouldn't see every single game, then you'd have surprises and you wouldn't be able to make those strategic decisions ahead of time. Also, it would add variance to the game, whereas I feel like, I mean, I've only played it the once, and I'm already kind of like, I'll play it again maybe one day, but I feel like I won't see anything new. I'll just be playing the same game, and yeah, my strategy is going to be different based on the order in which the cards come out, and also the leaders. You draft leader cards in the beginning of the game that give you like goals and things. But I feel like if that game had different cards coming out every game, I think it'd be way more interesting. We mentioned Terraforming Mars last week. Terraforming Mars, the interest comes and like you get these it's actually the same premise. You're building an engine and flogging that engine to win the game, right? But in Terraforming Mars, you're gonna get different cards in every single game because it has like 300 different cards, and you're not gonna have access to all of them. But in Lorenzo, you have access to all of the cards. They're just gonna come out in different orders.
But see, I think this could also be a strength as well. I think the game has enough strategic depth to be more along the lines of a Through the Ages type of card drafting system in it. And, and I've always said this about Through the Ages, is that all it needs is an expansion. And then you can decide whether you want to reveal the cards that are going to be in the game, like varying leaders or wonders, or you can leave them as a surprise for yourself. And I think Lorenzo would benefit from maybe an expansion of 2 cards per age per color, and then then you'd have or maybe even a whole new set of 4 that you mix and you deal out
4 more per age per color would be good.
And it would basically double, triple the replay as it came in. But anyways, love Lorenzo. I thought it was a very good game. And then we can talk about the final game that we played that night, which was Century: The Spice Road, which is interesting card drafting game. Basically, it's very similar to the small world mechanic of picking leaders. When you pick it, you can, there's a row of cards, and you can pay money to advance to the card that you want and pick it up and bring it into your tableau or hand, or you can just take a card that's been skipped on and bring that into your hand. And each round you're deciding whether you want to do one of 3 things, which is pay for or pick up a card, play one of the and bring it to your hand, play one of the cards that you have in hand, or purchase one of the overall goods that you're going for, victory points, basically, so to speak, playing with a number of different colors. However, it does have one glaring production problem that Trey will elaborate on.
Yeah, before I get into that, my general comments on the game, it's like it fills in the same niche as Splendor. It's an abstract light Euro game, and I personally think it's probably better than Splendor. They're very similar in as far as weight and complexity. I just think Century is, I don't know, a little more interesting because there's it's not just like you pick up poker chips and then spend poker chips. It's you're building kind of an engine by like gaining cards into your deck. I mean, it's kind of like a deck builder, right? You're gaining cards into a deck and then you run an engine by executing those cards, which about the same complexity as Splendor, but a much more interesting mechanic. However, I have a huge issue with the game, a literal issue, which is that is the most colorblind unfriendly game I've ever played, and it actually inspired me. So I have a list of like episodes we're gonna do, and we're gonna do an episode on colorblindness and just games and for how playable games are with colorblindness and other disabilities. And this was the worst, and it boggles my mind. We're this far into gaming as a very profitable industry, and publishers are still making this mistake, even though it's a very known issue and gets complained about a lot, because
there is a higher percentage of people who are playing games who are colorblind than you find within the normal scope of just general audiences. I would say somewhere around what I think an average in the population is somewhere around 5% are colorblind.
Yeah, well, it's 8% of men, so
8% of men.
Close to 5% of all people, which would be 1 out of 20. Board gaming, unfortunately, is still very heavily weighted towards men, so it's going to be a bigger number just on that basis alone. And then I started a discussion about this on the Board Game Geek forums, and someone made a brilliant point. It's not just the people that are colorblind that this is going to affect. It's going to affect our friends. Like when we played, I was constantly asking them, like, what color is this? What color is this? What color is this? Super annoying, I'm sure, but I can't play the game if they don't tell me. So, like, it slowed the game down for everybody and annoyed everybody because now they're not thinking about their turn. They're having to, like, tell me what colors cubes are.
Right.
And it's an unforced error by publishers. There are so many different ways you can mitigate this. Use different shapes for the resources. Use different colors that aren't red, green.
But this game itself just chose to put they had resources that were cubes, and they just put the exact same cubes on the card itself.
The cubes could have been different sizes
into the background. So
and the cards were just as bad, if not worse, than the cubes, because the cards were just cubes. Like okay, you want to use cubes as your resources, that's one thing, but on the card, couldn't you have put the spices themselves, like a little art of the spices themselves, which wouldn't blend because it'd be different drawings for each, but instead they just use the color cubes again on the card. So I'm getting confused not only by the resources in the game, I'm getting confused by the cards in the game, and not only did they use green and red, which a lot of games do, and I get mad about that, but then they use green, red, and brown. So it's just like 3 of the 4 resources were nearly indistinguishable to me, and so it just made the experience miserable because I'm like trying to play the game, but I'm also trying to like figure out what colors things are, and also annoying my friends by constantly asking them what colors they are.
Yeah, but one thing we should mention about the game, and aside from the color round issue, and I hope they do address that, is that Century is part of a trilogy of games, and apparently all the components are supposed to work together in like the larger game system.
Oh God.
And we'll see exactly how that works. This Spice Road is the first of the 3 parts, so maybe there'll be some things that actually increase the playability of the game.
So they didn't just ruin one game, they ruined potentially 3 by this color.
But no, maybe your comments will come in and definitely go ahead and...
Well, the thread had a lot of support on Board Game Geek. People were very encouraging and very critical of the publisher for doing this, and hopefully they take note and other publishers take note, because this is something that comes up time and time again. It's like, we know people love red and green, they're common colors, but there's so many ways around the colorblind issue. Use different art, use different shapes, make one a player color and one a resource color, that way there's no confusion. There's so many ways around the colorblind issue. Why is it still cropping up? I don't understand. So hopefully, eventually, publishers will like realize it and just stop doing it. But I thought it was getting better, but this is not. Apparently, it's getting worse because this is the worst game I've ever played as far as colorblindness.
Well, getting on from a topic that you're pretty passionate about
Yeah.
in colorblindness.
I can't wait for that episode. I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna go off on some publishers.
Hey man, just toggle the colorblind mode. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Moving to something that I'm more familiar with, definitely from shifting. Our show is not going to always be just about board games. We do love board games, but we also like to talk about issues that are inside of the industry itself and things that other podcasts do not really address on a regular basis. So
Right, and I hope that's what's gonna kind of separate us because I know you have a lot of options when it comes to game shows you want to listen to or watch on YouTube, but I feel like a lot of them don't want to talk about those issues because they're afraid of putting people off. But there are certain people that want to talk about those issues, and there are certain people who want to listen. I know I would be interested in listening to any kind of topic that is potentially problematic for various groups, and I feel like could use some more exposure and more discussion in the community. So that's kind of the niche I want our show to fulfill, and hopefully it does, is talking about these issues. And that way you'll have a reason to listen to us besides our lovely voices.
dulcet baritone.
So our topic du jour, kind of continuation of our discussion in our first episode, which was about race in the industry. And the first episode we focused on the publishing end, but today we're going to kind of talk about the community end and what that's like. And hopefully Charles can share some of his experiences being a POC. I have, and maybe I can give the opposite point of view of being like the majority class. Let's talk about the first prompt was how has your experiences been in like public meetups and conventions?
So definitely, I actually run one of the meetup groups in the city of Houston. So we're in Houston. It's a very diverse city. So here we actually do see many more people of color. But I've went in the past. I've gone to many towns where I might be, especially when I was doing more of the competitive scene and touring in different locations and going to different conventions and stores just to compete in their various events. You always go in and you sort of, as a person of color, and this is just in general for all people of color, you always look around to see, all right, let me see exactly what's my spec ratio or my majority to minority interface and things. And generally at public meetups and conventions, especially let's just take for example Board Game Geek Con, I literally I go there and I count. I get much better service than your average person because all the hotel people are just shocked to see me. So I can finagle quite a few different things. I can sit in the restaurant and no one will bother me for a long period of time. But definitely at like the board game conventions, while everyone is very nice, it's one thing that you definitely notice is the fact that everyone here is, there are a lot of white males here. There are a number of white women. There are usually at Board Game Geek Con, I've counted Eric Lang and maybe 5 other miscellaneous black people who are black males who are in the audience, and all the black women work
I don't
at the
think
hotel.
there's that many.
I do believe there's no. I saw 5 black men like the last 2 times I went. I found.
Oh, wow.
It took. This is over the course of like all the days who were actually attending the con and things. And then you go because I'm always looking for like just the other minorities and ethnicities. I'm always sad. It's like you almost see there's like no unattached Asian females, no unattached black females, basically, we have a posse of women in the convention. Most of the ones who are there are not that just that they're married, but they're there's not that many minority women, and believe it or not, there are minority women who do enjoy playing board games. But when I go to public
Yeah. Aren't you engaged to one?
video gamer, actually,
Oh, but
yeah,
she enjoys board games.
yeah, she does. Yeah, I am engaged to one, definitely. But the one thing that you notice at conventions, and I don't know if as many people notice, is how many one-time appearances happen when, especially when you're at the public meetups. You'll see one person who's like new, and they want to play a game, and like they never come back again. At your meetups, have you noticed that?
Like here at my house.
Not just at your
No,
house.
I'm like,
Obviously not at your house.
I know the people that go.
You used to go to public meetups. You go to a lot of conventions.
Yeah, no, I'm unfortunately not as observant as Charles. Like, I'm kind of like when I'm in a game, I don't really notice the crowd. So I haven't. I mean, I have noticed that there is like a very high turnover at the public meetups, for different reasons that we're not going to discuss in this episode, but maybe future episodes. Yeah, I have noticed that there's definitely people that show up and then I never see them again, which is unfortunate because what you want to do in a public meetup is bring people into the hobby, and those are working because I think the hobby is kind of exploding popularity. But I also feel like we lose people unnecessarily for a variety of reasons, and I hope that any kind of racial discrimination is not one of them. And I don't know. Have you ever noticed anyone treating you differently that you could tell at like a board game meetup?
In general, my experiences have been very good. Of course, as long as I'm a pretty big black male, as long as I'm not dealing with the police, things go fairly well and comfortable for me. But the one thing I do notice is, and this is not just with minorities, but this is with all new gamers who come to a public meetup. There are a lot of people there who just are not as friendly and who do not reach out as much to other people like yourself. Like they're in a game and that's what they're thinking about at the time, and that's off-putting when you're just the new guy at the game. Now just imagine if you go to the place and you're like, okay, not only am I like I'm the only black or Indian guy here, but I'm also, or in the other case where it's like I'm the only minority woman here. Hell, there's only two other women here.
Yeah.
It's just something that's a bit off-putting. I've had a lot of success in cultivating, more of a safe atmosphere. So if a minority woman comes in, it's not like dating time immediately. We try to, I talk to people in my own meetup just about, just give people a chance to come back, be friendly, but please don't ask them out the first time you meet them, as tempting as it is, because, you might not ever see them again.
Yeah,
But
it's, I also feel like a lot of people from a majority point of view hardly ever experience that. Like you're either in a homogenous situation or you're in a diverse situation, and either way, like there's at least some people around that look like you, talk like you, whatever, and it's kind of taken for granted, like because you never feel like a fish out of water. And hardly in my life, hardly ever, even though I live in Houston, one of the most diverse cities in the nation, like usually it's a very diverse situation, which is good. One of the great things about Houston. But you never really experience like I'm the only white person in this large room filled with tons of people. Like there's just not an experience that we go through a lot. So I'll share a small anecdote. Like I was on a date a few years ago, and we wanted to go grab a drink at a bar, and so I looked up on Yelp and found like a nearby bar, and so we go there to play pool. We walk in, and it was like 100% Hispanic, right? Walk in, literally, yeah, literally like the only place, we were the only people there, and that were not Hispanic, and so I was, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And they were like super hospitable and nice, and it was actually a really great experience. But I noticed it because I've never been in an experience like that before, and so I just think it's something that people in the majority take for granted because we're never in those experiences, so we're like, oh well, why would it be uncomfortable? Race doesn't matter or what things like that. But like, these are issues we don't often deal with, so we don't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not saying everybody. Probably some people do live in communities where they're the only white person, but I think a lot of people just don't deal with that enough to like know what it's like, or to empathize with that, or to know like why it would be uncomfortable.
Right. On the flip end, I'm one of the people who, have
In
dealt
that situation all the time.
I have dealt with it, so much that I've been, since my elementary school days when I got moved into the AP system, and I'm literally the percentage point of black in 3 different school systems in 3 different states all the time. So
Yeah.
it's definitely different. But getting back to the board gaming community, one thing that's very interesting about the community, especially when you follow it on forums, is the I want to call it component outrage when something is racially questionable. Because let's be honest, I play a lot of Euro board games. You play a lot of Euro games as well, correct?
Yeah.
So Europeans don't really think about this as much. They are, how shall I say it? Depending upon the country, they'll just, especially when it comes to American sensibilities, something that might be normal there, just because of how their treatment of minorities is in that country, for good or bad, is just unacceptable here. So we had issues like the slaves, fakirs issue in Five Tribes. And when that came up, it's like, oh, look, there's a whole long list of debate about whether it should be fakirs or it should be slaves, or
Yeah. That
should
is. I do want to devote an entire episode to that and to Puerto Rico and to those other issues. But yeah, I definitely think in Europe, it's, I've been to Europe to 11 different countries, and it's very, very homogenous, as you can imagine. So they probably just don't think about race as we do here, because we have to deal with these issues all the time in America, whereas they really don't for the most part. I mean, certain areas obviously, and they have huge immigration from various countries, but I still don't think they deal with it nearly as much as Americans do. At least Americans in certain areas.
well, why do you think like the board game community is so homogenous here?
That's actually something I've wondered for a long time, and I don't know. Do you have a theory? I'm sure you do. You probably have a better theory than I do, because I don't as much.
I would say 3 reasons.
Oh wow!
The first is, part of it is like the groups themselves, right? You have a lot of people host their groups in their home, and the people that they invite to their home are the people that they're friends with on a normal basis, and most people in the country are friends with other people who look like them. Like, you don't, as a country, depending upon different areas of the country, you just don't have as many people of a racial diverse background that you're not work friends with, that you're actually close with.
So it's like a compounding issue. Yeah.
So that's one just general compounding issue. The second thing is when you go to like a public event, people are more or less putting themselves sort of out there, like their best foot forward. So when they go somewhere public and they are completely lost and behind because they've never heard of a single game that you've ever played before, or you look at them like, oh, I've been playing Catan and some of the other early introduction games like Catan, Cards Against Humanity, Apples and Apples, and you're like, oh, you're playing stuff that will never reach the table here. We're glad you brought it, but if you look at it like it's trash, then people sort of feel a little butthurt, I guess would be the thing. And in one way, it's that. And on another way, they're just like, well, I did put my best foot forward and try to do something. And that normal effect there is only compounded when you go to a situation and it's like you are the only minority there of your persuasion or your gender, and it's just like, all right. So in addition to giving, they gave me the standard treatment they would give to any other person, which is literally what we fought the civil rights movement for. However, the other thing is like, well, I don't have to be here, so I'm not going to go. So, and I would probably say, just the third thing has been availability. However, that is something that luckily is sort of expanding, and exposure. So, every time I see a game at Target, I'm just super happy because when people come to our public meetup, we play in a public restaurant. We don't play in a gaming dedicated venue. So you can bring in a number of different people who have never seen games like this before and just say, hey, these are some games we play. You give them your regular days and times that you're there. And then you can tell them, this is a good game and this is a good game to start with. Like maybe even suggest Catan or Code Names or, maybe not apples to apples, but, the Game of 49 or something of that nature that's introductory and available or maybe even exclusively available at Target. We might not want to play like a Machikoro or Catan, but they might take it home and play it. And that's, and play with their family. And believe me or not, we all in Houston, we have a lot of problems getting Hispanic people to come to the game group. Like our biggest barrier with like Hispanic gamers here is literally getting them away from their family to come out and play games with us. So I just tell them, here's the games I play. Why don't you go to Target, get a copy. If you have any questions, you can ask me if you want to borrow my copy. You can do it, but that's sort of more of a cultural thing, and it's also a big issue with like other very family-oriented societies like North Indian and other things of that nature.
Yeah, the good news is though, as the hobby expands, it is increasingly becoming more diverse, which is great. And as we mentioned in the first episode, I think we're doing a better job with representation, which I think will bleed into greater accessibility. If you haven't listened to the first episode, go back and check that out. I think that was an interesting discussion that I think bleeds into this. I think as we represent a more diverse group of people in the games that we make, that will bring in a more diverse population, as it has done with comics, science fiction, fantasy, all of that. They all kind of like complement each other in that way. So that would be, I guess, the fourth issue that I think we're improving on. So
slowly, but there's been a lot of pushback in those other genres as well. But different episode.
Yeah. Well, we should probably shut it down. Is there anything else you want to add on this topic, Charles?
It's something that we're not going to talk about all the time. I know when people come to a podcast, they sort of don't really want to jump into the whole race issue, but definitely we'll have other issues that are equally as controversial. So just remember, it's not just uncomfortable. It won't be uncomfortable always. And, perhaps you can add some things that we missed that we can bring up later. Believe we should have some links and some comments. So if you think there's anything that we misrepresented or missed, you can comment on that section, and definitely something we'll bring up.
Comment on the website, comment on the YouTube video, email me, eternallybored@gmail.com. If you have things you want to address in future episodes, I have the next several episodes planned out, but I want to do episodes on anything that really matters to people in the community. So if you have issues you'd like us to discuss, comments you'd like to make, I can certainly bring those comments up in an episode. So please reach out. Also, @eternallybored on Twitter. And eternallybored.com is the website, and eventually there'll be a Facebook page too. We'll be everywhere. We'll be in all of the things. So please like us, follow us, all that great stuff.
But until then, We're eternally bored, so you don't have to be. Peace.